Hello, my name is Rich McMillan, and I am with the New York State Education Department, and I am preparing to present to you the presentation for the Perkins V program, Performance Indicator Calculations. So let me prepare the screen and share it with you. And this is the Perkins V data presentation, which is a PowerPoint slide that will be posted online along with this video. So if you are watching this video, you can download a copy of this data presentation in PowerPoint form for use without having to watch the video. And this is for calculating performance indicators by zip code, which is a topic that has been requested to be covered by many data reporters. Introduction. This presentation is intended to provide a method by which Perkins V data reporters can calculate 1P1, 2P1, and 3P1 post-secondary performance indicators. However, this presentation will not cover the preparation of performance indicator 1P1 at this time because the data has not yet been uploaded for the February report. So it will just cover 2P1 and 3P1. The method proposed uses the Microsoft Office application Excel, which it is assumed is readily available for use by virtually all state or government employees working with data, including Perkins data reporters. The method proposed will use the latest definitions, zip code table, and non-traditional crosswalk to determine performance indicators for each field of study represented by a unique zip code. What you will need: your school CTEA data. You must obtain an Excel spreadsheet of your CTEA 1, and if you host a CTEA 2 program, also your CTEA 2 data, which is easily done using the IDEX system, or you should have a copy in your file from your last upload in September. Also, the Microsoft Excel application is necessary to use for this process. The 2020 non-traditional occupations crosswalk, which is a table that indicates for each zip code whether an occupation is non-traditional and also for which gender such occupation is non-traditional. Obtaining your school CTEA data. Good practice is to always keep an Excel template with complete uploaded CTEA data, one for CTEA 1 data and another for CTEA 2 data. And of course, copies for each school or subdivision reporting CTEA data under your control or management. If this practice has been followed, then use that data for the process discussed herein. Another way to get your CTEA data is to log into the IDEX system and download a copy of your CTEA data. Be certain to download copies of both CTEA 1 and CTEA 2 data if both types of programs are present on your campus. And also be certain to gather data from each school or subdivision. Performance indicators are reported by project number, so be familiar with all institutions included in your project. Getting started, review of definitions. To begin, some concepts must be reviewed regarding the CTEA data. Participants are students with greater than 0 credit hours or greater than 0 contact hours. Concentrators are students with greater than or equal to 12 credit hours for CTEA 1 or greater than or equal to 100 contact hours for CTEA 2. Completers are defined by using the status variable column. For CTEA 1 students, the responses are either completer, enrolled during the academic year, or received certificate, degree, not enrolled during the year. And for CTEA 2 students, the status responses are completer or received certificate, degree, not enrolled during the year. And then completers are always concentrators by definition, no matter the number of credit hours earned or contact hours. Dealing with duplicate records in CTEA. The rules of CTEA reporting require reporting multiple programs pursued by the same student in multiple records or rows. Therefore, some schools will have multiple records for individual students. Duplicates result from individual students pursuing multiple programs represented by different SIP codes and/or IRP codes. Because removal of duplicate students is a very complex topic, it cannot be covered in this presentation. Fortunately, there are a very small percentage of duplicates, around 3% maximum. So your performance indicators calculated with duplicates included in your analysis should be very close to those we will calculate after removing duplicate students before we calculate performance indicators for your project. Removing non-completers and non-concentrators. Open your CTEA 1 or CTEA 2 file in Excel. Then select Sort and Filter from the ribbon. Then select Custom Sort. Then in the Sort By drop-down menu, select Status. You should now press OK, and you should now have the table of students sorted by status. Select all rows showing completer status, then cut those rows and paste them into a new spreadsheet or tab, and make certain they are deleted from the CTEA file you're working with. Next, again, select Sort and Filter from the ribbon, then select Custom Sort. Then in the Sort By drop-down menu, select Credits Earned for CTEA 1 or Contact Hours for CTEA 2. You should now have the table of students sorted by either credits earned for CTEA 1 or contact hours for CTEA 2. Copy and paste all students, which are in rows, with 12 or more credit hours for CTEA 1 or 100 or more contact hours for CTEA 2 to the table or tab where you cut and pasted the completers in the last step. You now should have a table of concentrators defined as either completers or students with equal to or greater than 12 credits earned or equal to or greater than 100 contact hours for CTEA 2. Text and numeric descriptors for responses. This document uses descriptors for various responses, so here is the key to those descriptors. Gender, the gender of the student. Options are 1 equals male, 2 equals female, 3 equals unknown, not available, 4 equals non-binary. Completion status, and this would be for CTEA 1 only. A status of the student at the completion of the reporting year, still enrolled, 1 has not received a credential but is still enrolled in the program, transferred to another program within the institutions, coded 2, transferred to another program in a different institutions, coded 3, completer, enrolled during the academic years, coded as 4, other, not enrolled, coded as 5, terminated enrollment without completing the program, and then received a certificate, degree, not enrolled during the year. Now, completion status for CTEA 2A only would be status of the student at the conclusion of the reporting year, June 30th, received certificate, degree, not enrolled during the year. That would be number 1. Persisting, still enrolled, number 2. That would be has not received a credential, but is still enrolled in the program. Completer, enrolled during the academic years, coded number 3. And then other, not enrolled, coded number 4. That means terminated enrollment without completing the program. In this document, the text descriptors are used, and your data may use numeric values. And that's why I'm providing this key, is in case your data is in the form of numeric values and not text descriptors. Calculating performance indicators. The next step is to calculate performance indicators using the table of concentrators obtained in the last step. Unfortunately, the 1P1 value requires placement data. That's the imp status variable that is not available until February. That is, you're not required to upload that data until February, and so we're not in a position to teach you how to calculate the 1P1 until you have data that you can use to calculate 1P1. We will calculate the 2P1 performance core indicator and the 3P1 performance core indicator using available data as is and was uploaded in September. We will use the pivot table to calculate the 2P1 performance indicator next. Calculating 2P1 performance indicator. Using the table of concentrators created in the last step, select all data on the Excel spreadsheet. Select Insert from the ribbon, then Pivot Table, and choose to place the pivot table on a new worksheet by selecting the radio button, then select OK. Note the pivot table fields area at the right of the spreadsheet. With the mouse, drag Student ID text for CTA 1 or Student ID for CTA 2 to the values area of the pivot table fields area. Next, drag the zip code choice variable to the rows area of the pivot table fields area. Here is the code for 2P1 numerators. The numerator for CTA 1 students for 2P1, the status should equal either completer, enrolled during the academic year, or received certificate degree, not enrolled during the year. The numerator for CTA 2 students is status equals completer or received certificate degree, not enrolled during the year. So using the pivot table, drag status to the columns area. Using the drop-down arrow at the top of the pivot table, it's going to be on the upper left side of the spreadsheet. Select only, click on the drop-down arrow, and then select only the two statuses indicated above for either CTA 1 or CTA 2 students. You should now see a count of completers for each zip code, and copy this table and paste it on a new tab of the workbook. Create a new tab by pressing the plus button at the bottom of the Excel spreadsheet. And on that new tab, you might want to label that CTA 1 2P1 numerator or CTA 2 2P1 numerator. You must perform this process for each CTA group. So if you have both CTA 1 and 2 at your school, you have to perform this process twice, one for CTA 1 and once for CTA 2. Next, we will calculate the 2P1 denominator. Here's the code for 2P1 denominators. The denominator for CTA 1 students, the status equals completer, enrolled during the academic year, or received certificate degree, not enrolled during the year, or other, not enrolled. The denominator for CTA 2 students, the status equals completer, or received certificate degree, not enrolled during the year, or others, not enrolled. Please note that the denominator includes all students in the numerator, and it adds students with status equals other, not enrolled. So using the pivot table, return to the drop-down arrow at the top of the pivot table and select other, not enrolled, while leaving the other selections in place for completer, enrolled during the academic year, and received certificate degree, not enrolled during the year. So now you'll have 3 statuses selected instead of 2 as in the numerator step. Now copy this table to the tab where you copy the numerator table and label this table CETEA 1 2P1 denominator, or CETEA 2 2P1 denominator. Next are the final calculations for 2P1. To calculate the 2P1 performance indicator for your CETEA 1 or CETEA 2 data, for each zip code, divide the numerator grand total by the denominator grand total to achieve the 2P1 percentage for the associated zip code in that row. So we have sample data and given in the table. So using the sample data obtained using the instructions here and above for zip code 51.0803, you'll note that we have the numerator here is going to be 2 and the denominator is going to be 3. The grand total of the numerator is 2 for the zip code 51.0803, and the grand total is 3 for zip code 510803 on the denominator table. So there we divide 2 by 3 for a 2P1 percentage value of 67%. Final notes on calculating the 2P1 performance indicator. You must perform this process separately for CETEA 1 and CETEA 2 data. Be careful reading the pivot tables you create and focus on the grand total column. It might be best to transfer the values to a new table of numerators and denominators before the final calculation of percentage in order to check your work. The Perkins V 3P1 performance core indicator will be discussed next. And the Perkins V 3P1 core indicator calculates the percentage using as the numerator the number of students pursuing a field of study non-traditional for their specific gender, and using as the denominator the number of students pursuing a non-traditional field of study, period. To calculate 3P1, it will be necessary to refer to an additional table termed the non-traditional crosswalk to determine which programs are considered non-traditional for one gender. Not all programs are non-traditional. Think bartenders. So the crosswalk is used for two purposes. To first, determine if the program or field of study is non-traditional, and then, if so, to next determine which gender is identified as non-traditional, and then counting students of that gender in that field of study. Non-traditional occupations crosswalk. For Perkins 3P1 performance indicator, we must use an additional data source, the non-traditional crosswalk, which connects occupations using zip codes to their non-traditional status and gender. The 2020 non-traditional crosswalk was released in June of 2021. Previously, we used an earlier 2010 non-traditional crosswalk. So it's important that you use the latest crosswalk, which has only been out 6 months. So we will use the new 2020 non-traditional crosswalk. Here's the link, and I put the link at the bottom of the page. It's https://s3:aws/capital capital R, capital E, capital V, capital I, capital S, capital E, capital D, underscore, capital F, capital I, capital N, capital A, capital L, hyphen, 2020, hyphen, capital N, O, N, T, R, A, D, I, T, I, O, N, A, L, hyphen, capital C, R, O, S, S, W, A, L, K, hyphen 6, hyphen 9, hyphen 2021, period, XLSX. Here's a screenshot of the top of the first page of the non-traditional crosswalk, and you'll note at the far left, the zip code is located. This is the zip code that you will match with the zip code of your programs. And the non-traditional occupations are indicated by a Y character in either the female or male columns. And you'll note there will never be a Y in both columns. The Y will only be in one column or the other. So, for example, in the second listed occupation, agricultural business and management general, with a zip code of 01.0101, there's a Y in the female column. So this occupation is first and foremost, a non-traditional occupation, because it is non-traditional for one gender, and B, it is non-traditional for the female gender. So all students in this occupation should be found in the denominator, and those reporting gender of female should be found additionally in the numerator of 3P1. Calculating 3P1 performance indicator. The 3P1 numerators are determined as follows. CETA 1, 3P1 numerator. Heads gender equals female, and non-traditional table equals female Y. Or heads gender equals male, and non-traditional table equals male Y. And the zip code must not be missing. You must have the zip code to make this determination. Next, for CETA 2, 3P1 numerator, heads gender equals female, and non-traditional table equals female Y, or heads gender equals male, and non-traditional table equals male Y. And the zip code must not be missing. The zip code is matched to the non-traditional table to determine, first and foremost, if the field of study is non-traditional. If there's not a Y in either the male or female column, then that is not a non-traditional field of study. And then B, to determine for which gender the field is non-traditional. The 3P1 denominator is determined as follows. CETA 1, 3P1 denominator, non-traditional table equals female Y or male Y for zip code, and for CETA 2, 3P1 denominator, non-traditional table equals female Y or male Y for zip code. The zip code is matched to the non-traditional table to determine if the field of study is non-traditional, which would be either a male or female Y value. Using Excel pivot tables as before, select from the top line menu, insert, then tables group, then pivot table. Next, in the pivot table fields, select and drag student ID text or student ID for CETA 2 data to the values area. Make sure it indicates count. If not, select count using the drop-down arrow. You should see a number indicating the count of students in the upper left portion of the pivot table. Next, select zip code choice or zip code for CETA 2 in the pivot table fields area and drag it with the mouse to the rows area below, at which time you should now see zip codes with student counts in the upper left portion of the pivot table. Next, select heads gender in the pivot table fields area and drag it with the mouse to the columns area below. You should now have a table of something like this, example, in the upper left portion of your pivot table. If you notice, I have a table, a sample table laid out. You should now have two new columns, female and male, and also potentially unknown NA and grand total for each zip code representing a program of study at your school. So just for example, for the zip code, program of study represented by zip code 51.0803, it appears there are 53 female and 12 male students. Now you should have two new columns, and the female and male are the columns you'll want to pay attention to. The next steps are to, one, determine if the program of study represented by the zip code is non-traditional, and if so, to two, determine which gender is non-traditional. Complete this process for each zip code, focusing on those zip codes that have a Y for each zip code for male or female. We use a table from the internet to make these determinations, termed the non-traditional crosswalk, and here's the link to that table. You can use the 2020 table by downloading it using the button in the center of the page, and here's the file name of the table. Now, I gave you the link to download that earlier presentation. When you open it, it is an Excel file. Using my example from a previous slide, I will search for zip code 51.0803 using the Excel top line menu, home, then editing area, then find and select to search. And here's what I find in the table. For 51.0803, the occupation is occupational therapist assistant. And if you notice, it is it's got a Y in the column. So we know that this is a non-traditional field of study because one of the two genders has a Y in the column. And so note that the zip code indicates the profession of occupational therapists, assistants, and aides, and that is non-traditional for the male gender. So using the earlier pivot table example, zip code 51.0803, non-traditional for males, has 12 males in that program. So for that program, the rate of participation is determined as the number of non-traditional students by their gender, 12, divided by the total number of students in that non-traditional program, which is 65, for a percentage of 18%. And so this means that in that program, at that school, 18% of students are non-traditional. Thus, the 3P1 value for that program, represented by zip code 51.0803, is 18%. Complete this process for each zip code, only calculating percentage for those zip codes that have a 1 or yes, that would be a Y value for each zip code for male or female. Be very careful to correctly identify the values for separate gender. Be certain to use the 2020 non-traditional crosswalk and not the earlier version. Conclusion, you're now in possession of a method to determine the Perkins V, 2P1, and 3P1 performance indicators approximately. As indicated earlier, if you did not remove the duplicates, your final figures will vary slightly from the official calculation we will perform at a later time. The additional step not included here is that of removing students' duplicate files while keeping their file with the highest status completer and or greatest number of credit hours. And so this would be a step that you could perform if you like. But we don't recommend it because we're not training you to do that in this presentation. The non-traditional participation calculation may seem daunting, but is manageable by moving through it step by step. Performing many manipulations offers the risk of introducing error, and tedium is an enemy of accuracy. So some find it best to work on these sort of tasks early in the day when the mind is fresh. I want to thank you very much for attending this presentation. It's been a pleasure to assist you. Again, my name is Richard McMillan. I'll spell my email address, RICHARDMillan@nysed.gov. So please email me with any questions. And again, I want to thank you for participating, watching our video today, and please have a wonderful day. Thank you very much.